Okay, remote access, chapter 14, the last chapter, which everybody thought we would never get to. Two things here, remote access and remote control. And the difference between the two is where the processing actually takes place. Remote access is something that they improved in 2003 and 2008 to allow you to actually do now what we call virtual applications. What we're really doing when they do virtual applications is using a remote desktop. The company that has done that for years and years and years is Citrix. The Citrix client, in combination with Microsoft Remote Access or Remote Desktop, allows you to use a not very strong computer to run everything remotely. And what this really means is that we've kind of come full circle. We started out in the computing world with mainframes. And in the mainframes, quite honestly, that's a good term there, right? In the mainframes, what they would do was chop the mainframe up into virtual machines. So virtualization is something that was in the beginning, and now it's something that has resurrected itself. We want to desire to do a lot of virtualization. A lot of virtualization goes on in industry. One of the biggest virtualizations that goes on is the Citrix client, where you get certain applications that you can run at your desktop and save them centrally. They do that up front. The administrative people run almost exclusively on Citrix. So we can do those things. Understand remote access, remote control features in Windows 7. VPN is the other thing that I want you to be able to do. I'll go through that process to create a VPN, because you're going to have to do that again here in a day or so. A VPN, virtually private network. This chapter has slide after slide after slide and paragraph after paragraph after paragraph about dial-up. And mostly people don't use dial-up. It's still there. It's a capability. The one dial-up thing that you're probably going to use is VPN. It's a dial-up process to be able to create those things. Direct access technology is something that is kind of at least supplanting, replacing virtual private network. Allows you to get direct access to your machine, for instance, from outside the network. A VPN, as long as you have the connectivity set up, you can do those things. Understand how remote desktop is used, how remote assistance supports users, and I did that a little early on the midterm. Most of you figured out the remote assistance and how to do that. That was good. But this one has actually got the lab in here. Branch cache is something that is new with these things. And what branch cache is designed for if you have remote offices and you have a central server. For instance, if we had a central server at Virginia Beach that stored everything, branch cache, the first person that actually downloaded a file, it would get cached locally so that you didn't have to use the network in order to get the files the second time. And that's really all that is. Sync Center, mostly something that's used for laptops in order to use the mobile portions of Windows 7, and you're not going to be able to configure the mobile on your virtual machine. The Mobility Center won't even show up, I don't think, because it only shows up in mobile systems in laptops. So remote access, dedicated computer acting as a remote access server. Other computers and mobile computers configured to link to that server. What this allows us to do is to connect to a system and then get to the network behind it. What we're really talking about is VPN to a system. You get an IP address, and then you can go to the network that's behind that remote access server. It's kind of like if you used a firewall, except you're using a server in order to do that. Frequently, VPNs actually go to firewalls, and then you're allowed to access the network behind it. Link established over dial-up connection over the TCP/IP network. We can do any of those things. Remote control uses a software to send keyboard and mouse commands to a remote location. So the only thing we're sending there are the commands themselves, and that's going to be a much lower demand on the networking itself, the network itself. And these are just what we're actually doing here. Remote control, commands through the firewall. Remote access, there's actually a file transfer, so it's going to take more of the system resources in order to use that one. Remote dial-up, remote access dial-up connectivity, analog and ISDN, and these are the ones that the dial-up protocols, point-to-point protocol, which those of you who have had Cisco remember as one of the Layer 2 protocols that was there. It was the common Layer 2 protocol, because HDLC, everybody had HDLC, but they were all proprietary. If you wanted to go from a Cisco to a something else, you had to use point-to-point protocol. So those are the ones that are there. These are the ones that I'm going to go through, and then as some of the terminology, PSTN, publicly switched telephone network, POTS, plain old telephone system, the analog system that many of us use. Actually, a lot of people aren't using that anymore. Voice over IP is going to be a digital system. One of the things to remember is when you get into these digital systems and you want to fax machines require an analog phone line. You either have to have a separate analog phone line or have a digital analog converter on your digital phone system. Remote access servers is the point that we're going to connect to. And again, all of these things, they go through, I think it looks like at least half of the slides are dial-up slides. Are you going to use that? Anybody using dial-up? For real?
Just with
you're just kidding me, right? Is anybody using dial-up?
With a phone internet.
With the phone internet, yeah. Although that's only when you tether to it, but that's really not analog, is it?
No, I was making a joke about my cell phone.
Your cell phone, those work. They're not usually the fastest connection in the world, but they will work. Remote access VPN connectivity. A truly private network is the telephone dial-in system. A virtual private network means that we encrypt the transmission from one point to the other. VPNs are something that businesses use quite frequently for people that travel, because now everybody but the expensive hotels give you free wireless or free some sort of internet access, right? You go to Red Roof Inn and it's free. You go to the Hilton, you got to pay for it. But other than that, this becomes a much less expensive proposition for business to be able to have this private connection from point to point. What makes it private is we actually encrypt the packet and put an unencrypted IP address, a routable IP address on it. Because if we encrypt everything, try to send it out, the routers aren't going to be able to route things because they wouldn't be able to do that. So it's going to be a secure point-to-point connection. When you create a VPN connection, you're probably going to lose everything else. Because when you create this thing, it sends all the traffic down the VPN. That's what they're designed to do. There is a way around it called split tunneling, and if you really want to set one up and have some stuff go encrypted and some unencrypted, there's lots of information available on how to do that. So what we have says data is encrypted, encrypted, encrypted. What you do is take your packet, encrypt the packet, and then put a readable IP address on it and send it to the other end. When it gets to the other end, the remote access server, the connection point, it strips off the added header, the IP address, the routable IP address, decrypts the data, and then sends it to the private network on the back side. When you create a VPN, this remote access server, when you connect to it, it's going to give you another IP address. It's going to give you an IP address on the internal of the private network so that you actually become part of that private network. Issue here network administrators is how you know that this machine that's connected to your VPN isn't infected. You don't, maybe. How's that? We'll get to that one. We have the capability. Remember, actually, we'll do that in server. We have the capability to actually scan these machines to be sure that they have a virus checker. The virus checker is up to date, and that the Windows updates are up to date. Yeah, the help. Yeah, then they'll allow unhealthy machines. Just sends them off to get healthy, and then it allows the connectivity to take place. And what you said is you really don't unless it is a company machine.
Even if it is, they had a problem at the police department with this.
Yeah,
virus.
A virus, and you don't know. Exactly, you don't know. If this is a member of the domain, there are other steps that you can do. If it's your machine, you can manage the configuration. The problem that you get into here is if you hire somebody to work at home and they're using their own computer, you have no control over those. That's just an oh, by the way. The process that we're looking at here is we create a client. The client goes through the firewall has access allowed through it, and we get to the remote access server. Issue in the firewall is supposed to be filtering all this stuff, right? It can't read it either. So VPN, anything that is encrypted is going to go through the firewall unchecked because since it's encrypted, the firewall can't read the information that's in the packet. The protocols, tunneling protocols, and we always draw these really cool tunnels that go from point A to point B. The odds are against that because how many routers do you think are between any 2 points? That's why when we say tunnel, what we really mean is it's an encrypted packet with a routable IP address appended to it so that it can get from point A to point B and go through those routers. And this is kind of down here, we go down here, trailer, and the header. We take this header tunnel with data packet encryption. This header is going to be a new IP header. It's going to be a routable. It's going to be unencrypted. We can either, and there are two different ways to do this. You can encrypt the whole packet or you can just encrypt the data. Or there is another one called authenticating headers. If the data doesn't need to be encrypted, that you just want to be sure who you're connected to, you can use that for authentication. Layer 2 tunneling protocols and point-to-point tunneling protocol are the two that Microsoft uses, along with SSTP, Secure Socket Tunneling Protocol, which was something that was added in the new servers. They added that because instead of when we configure the other tunneling protocols, you've now got to go back and reconfigure your firewall to allow connectivity through the firewall. Many firewalls have port 443 open, and that's what this one does, is it uses port 443 in order to establish the tunnel. The key exchanges, creating a VPN. What I want to do is just go through and show you how to do that. Internet address destination, use smart card. Warning, if you select use smart card, you got to use smart card. I had a student in an Active Directory class one time decided that he wanted to see what would happen if he configured a policy to require smart cards for his domain. It required smart cards, and we didn't have any. There was no other way to authenticate because that was the only one that he set up. Those things like that. Be careful when you do these things. That's where virtual machines come in, try stuff out, see what works and what doesn't work. I'm clicking through these because I want to go through that. We'll get to DirectAccess here in a minute. Let me see if I can get to, see if my machine not using the domain credentials. This thing should be a member of the domain now. I'll pause. So when we want to create a VPN, we need to go to the Network and Sharing Center here. And now I'm going to set up a new connection or network, connect to a network. What I want to do is connect to a network, and if you see down here, it says that wired dial-up VPN. So I'm connected to the Windows 7 .local internet access, which is it was smarter than me. First we got to set up a new connection, then we'll connect to it. The setup, the choices here: set up a network, connect to the internet, set up a network, configure a new router or access point, connect to a workplace. VPN connections here, or we can do the dial-up. Let's go to the VPN. Use my internet connection or dial directly. This is if you had to dial to a service provider first. You could put the phone number in there, and then it would establish the VPN once you got to that location. Use my internet connection, and the address 10.60.66.253 is one that we should be able to use, and that's the Ranger server. Use smart card, allow other people to use this connection. Don't connect now, just set it up. We can go through this either way. I'm going to go ahead and let it try to connect here. The username when you do this is VPN, and capital P, password 1 is the password. Show characters if you want to be sure that you've typed the password correctly. You can remember the password so that it will do an auto configure for you. The domain's optional. Shouldn't be an issue with this, but we'll find out. It's connecting to Ranger, verifying the username and password. That's usually going to be a good sign that it actually has been able to negotiate security for me. Now I'm connected. If I go back to my command prompt and do an IP config, spell it right, I should find that I have, I hope, a new address. Yeah, 192.168.10.12. You notice it doesn't have a default gateway. That's going to be the IP address that is on the network, which only kind of sort of exists. There's a NIC there at the other end that would allow me to access the private network through an encrypted connection. And if I wanted to, let's see if I can ping 192.168.1.1. I can get there still. Ping yahoo.com. You notice I got the address, but it's not pinging, it's timed out. The DNS server it can get to. What it can't get to is that location because it's sending everything down the VPN, and I would have to go through the VPN. I could put a router out on that and go out to the internet and be able to go through that system. But that's the steps that are involved in creating a VPN client. Now, it's really complex at the other end. You just turn the protocol on, basically, on this one. When you install routing remote access server, you just tell it that you want to put the VPN protocols in. There are configurations that are available on this thing, and this one shows that a Ranger is connected. Disconnect properties. If I go into the properties, the options here, display the progress, redial attempts, those sorts of things. The security, you can specify one of the tunneling protocols, or you can use automatic. I used automatic, and it's going to pick whichever one is available. In this case, I'm pretty sure it picked a point-to-point tunneling protocol, a PPTP. Extensible authentication protocols, networking, what we're going to do. So there are networking, what's going on, and networking is, this is where you would go in and configure the split tunnel if you wanted to do that. allow other network users to connect to this computer's internet connection. That's the ICS, Internet Connection Sharing capability of this thing. When I'm ready to go off of this thing, I can just go in here and disconnect, and it's going to shut down that system. And you notice that it did have the internet unavailable. When I disconnected, the red X went away, because it can now get out of its network because the VPN is no longer there. Remote Desktop Protocol, RDP, is something that allows us to, and I'll go from this machine here, Remote Desktop Protocol, to connect to, and we'll go to the virtual server, connect to and actually manage a remote system. When you get there, you're actually on that system. If I shut down, it's going to shut down. So if you're at home and you want to log off of your system, be sure you log off and not shut down, because if you're managing it remotely and you shut down, then you get to drive in and push the button and restart it. It allows us to be on the other machine. So what I am is over there on that one. If we want to look at the virtual machines, what's going on, the numbers that are running. And the one that has been driving me crazy, as you know, is the disk space. 836 gig available on that drive. We're down to 13 gig, which is a whole lot better than it was when it was down to 25 meg. But these things take up space. What can you monitor? What can you do with it? We could go in here and run anything that's available as if we were at the console on the machine. The Windows 7 machines, the home versions, generally don't have the ability, not generally, you can't remote desktop to them. You can remote desktop from them, but you can't remote desktop to them. So that's the remote desktop. You can create your own and keep the connections, configure the connections, and save them if you want to when you go through these things. Standalone, these are just different things you can read about. Program settings, the things that we can configure with it. Remote app, remote desktop, web app, these are all things that Microsoft has developed to try to make it easier to remotely manage the systems. The problem, I think, with being able to do that is somebody else might try to remotely manage your system for you. Anytime that you add services, you're going to add holes in your firewall and you're going to add attack surface. The remote assistance allows somebody to send you or you to send somebody a request to assist you. There are other websites, systems that are available for you to do that. A guy at night really likes one. It's called Meet.me, I think is the name of it, or Join.me, which allows you, if somebody needs help, you can go there and get a code, or they can go get a code. What they do is they go get a code and send you the code. There, you put the code in. They can then give you the authority to take control of their computer, look at it, make changes to it, whatever you want, whatever you need to do to the system. So it's a way without driving to a location that's available, that's free for you to do that. I think the problem with the remote assistance is if you look into it, it works great on the same network. But the IP address that it puts in for you to connect is going to be whatever IP address is on the system. So if you if somebody sends you one from their house to your house, it's going to have their private IP address. It's going to be difficult to connect to. These other third-party systems that are available allow you to do that. There are a number of applications that you can get on there. Amy Admin is one. It shows up as a hacker tool, which it kind of is, because it'll give somebody access to your machine as long as they have the code. There are a number of free ones out there. This is available. If you take the Microsoft test, this is what they're going to test you on in order to do those things. There are a number of things that are available to you. The remote access and the system properties, remote remote assistance settings, and when you go into the advanced, how long do you want the invitation to be good for, those sorts of things. Over here, remote desktop allow connections from computers running any version of remote desktop, and then the other one is from running only those running remote desktop with network level authentication. When you see that one, read network level authentication, read Vista and Windows 7. XP, if you have that selected, XP machines won't be able to connect using a remote desktop. In the enterprise, professional, and everything version, you should be able to do remote desktop, but the home versions, I think you're not going to be able to remote desktop to them. The key that we're going to get there, branch cache, talked about a little bit. This requires servers. This is an Active Directory environment situation. It's for remote sites that you don't want to have servers running at. The first person to download it gets cached. It can get cached on a workstation. It can get cached on a server when you do those things. The Sync Center, mostly for portable devices, allows you to sync files after you take the device off of the network. And the Mobility Center is available on laptops if you want to use it. Synchronization, the wireless networking, presentation settings. You'll not be able to do any of that on your virtual machines. So here, I think the two major things to take away from this one is, one, VPN. And two, how do you use remote desktop? Remote desktop for you, because you're not necessarily going to be in a room with your servers. Most of you have been over there in the NOC that Chris stays in, and I don't know how he does, because to me it's too cold, too noisy. Except when the air conditioning goes out and then it's too hot, too noisy. Does he need to be there? And have you ever noticed that how does he configure most of the machines? How does he manage most of the machines? Have you ever seen him do that? He sits there at his desk in the room and uses a remote desktop instead of turning around and using the console. Remote desktop is a tool that you really need to be familiar with. By default, Windows servers allow 2 connections for administrative management of the systems. By default, workstations allow 1 connection. So if you remote desktop to a machine, whoever's working at the console, you're going to knock them off.
Is that kind of like Telnet?
Telnet is a much more basic protocol. Telnet, when you do Telnet, you actually get a command prompt, right? You can Telnet to a Windows machine, command prompt to command prompt. The protocol is RDP. The port's 3389. For all of you who are studying for these tests, what port do these things run on? RDP runs on port 3389. It is a standard. You can take a Linux machine and use the RDP protocol and connect to a Windows machine and manage your Windows machine through a Linux system. So it's a protocol standard. The other things, Sync Center could come in handy if you go off and on the network and you take files with you so that they get updated when you come back. Mobility Center for the laptops. Branch cache, if you really get into remote sites and in Active Directory, branch cache is something that you probably would configure, but that's, I think, a little bit beyond this one. These last few chapters, some of this stuff is kind of in the Microsoft vein, as they will test you on the stuff that you need to know, and then probably ask you a couple of questions about whatever the next one is, the server one, if you take their test. Questions?